Thank you. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Thank you for a wonderful introduction. And I welcome all the eminent panelists for today's panel discussion. Very interesting topic of a role of security, safety, and loss prevention in our national growth. Very interesting topic for a discussion. We have been hearing a lot of valuable key inputs from the chairman sir and the respective speakers who had come subsequently. We will take forward few details from that and we'll carry forward this discussion. To set the conversation for today's discussion, putting across few of my points that as a society we have been evolving. Are you able to hear me now? Yeah. As a society, I think we have been evolving quite rapidly in last 1 decade, and last 2 years, particularly during the pandemic time, I think the society has gone to a drastic change in terms of behavior, in terms of how we think, how we engage, how we build. So that is one element which has been drastically driving the whole society globally, rather, I would say. Now, and security is one such subject which is not anymore restricted only to a border security or something external, internal. The definition of security has gone a major shift in last 1 decade. So today we encompass many elements within the gambit of security, which directly, indirectly impacts the society, and thus it also impacts the nation's development. We have seen many examples in the near future or in the past, how the society has evolved and what kind of security risk it can also bring in. As we grow, develop, evolve, security needs have been constantly changing. What we envisage security maybe a decade ago and what we look at it today, I think there has been a big change. And of course, what is also equally important that we have also started learning to adopt, learn, grow, and manage and mitigate those risks very effectively. I think that is something which has been happening and which will continue to happen in the near future as well. Taking forward for this discussion, welcoming all the eminent speakers today on the dais who have joined online and along with me, Gary is here. I will start interacting with all of them. My first question here, I would like to start with Mr. Pankaj Dixit. Sir, I would like to understand that security has always been narrowly seen as a military security or a border security. How do you see the hinterland security has come into foray in today's environment? Like, do you think there is a change which has taken place, how it is changing, how the dynamics are changing? If you can throw some lights on that particular point. Please, sir, to Mr. Pankaj Dixit. Pankaj, you are able to hear me? So you'll have to... Sir, can you please unmute yourself? I'd like to go for that particular thing? How things have evolved?
Well, surely, yes. We hope Colonel Dixit joins soon, but very good morning. And as I always say that IISSM, whatever it does, it's always very, very futuristic. And most of the topics that we have discussed in the last few years, you find those challenges becoming real in subsequent years. So that's the kind of pertinent subjects it brings out. As of now, few considerations about security, although Mr. Hebliker has already very well articulated in terms of the overall canvas that exists. But few things on security and nation when it comes out, clear-cut change from where we were. The first change is the threat of borders is also threat at my home and threat at my office. Earlier, the bomb blasts and bullets were only at the border. But now, world over, these bullets and bomb blasts are also happening in front of my house, in front of my office. So my challenges have become as real as the military man at the border. But at the same time, when we are on the corporate security, we obviously don't have the same resources to tackle those challenges. So that's one major change that has happened. Another major change that has happened is, no more the war is limited to a physical war as it was traditionally fought. The wars originally have been wherever the value was. If you'll recall, a lot of time, India was attacked, but not owned just because they saw value in gold, jewels, and whatever. They picked up and went away. Then they saw value in the land as well, so land used to get captured. Ultimately, the value, if you look at, has moved to resources and ultimately also to data. The last US president being made because there was something wonderfully being done Twitter or Facebook. Can you imagine the power of data, that it can produce the most powerful man in the world? So the war also has changed its dimensions, or the security has changed its dimensions. There's no more static security or a physical war or something like that. So that means you have various avenues and dimensions around you. Third aspect, which we all security professionals, whether within the government or outside in the corporate sector or as a common man, have not realized as yet. The first two factors still a lot of people talk about. The third factor is, there is not going to be a start date and the end date of war. There is not going to be a start time and an end time of the bad guys hitting you. The war is on. There are tools available when a country can even bring down fighter aircraft of another country without launching a missile, just by jamming it. It is already happening that the electrical system of a city is being shut down by another country. It's already happening. So there are tons of examples of this nature. So which means the onus on us security professionals, whether we are within the government sector or outside, is to face this war continuously and have your measures which are continuous in nature. Don't wait, something is going to happen. If you're active, that something will not happen. So these are the change of dimension, these are the change of criteria, these are the change of avenues, and at the same time, the preparation, whatever we do, is insufficient as of now because we are still facing a lot of hits from all directions. Thankfully, yes, India has not seen a major terrorist attack for a long time. Thankfully, yes, the borders also have going a little softer. We had Siachen having a truce, at least the active battle has finished. Line of control has been having off and on, but we've been having new challenges towards the China side, the line of actual control. So things, even if softer there, for us corporate professionals or people at home or even as a country, I'm very sure Mr. Hablikar and a lot of other intelligence professionals know that the war has actually gone up. While we can talk about less dead, but the war intensity has actually gone up. So these are avenues, these are dimensions. I think it all requires a collective effort from all of us to get prepared. So these are the changes that I can see.
So when we are talking about these changes, it's a continued question we'd like to put across to you, because it's a very interesting subject where how the security threats are changing or how it is getting magnified in the current circumstances. Do you think with the current kind of infrastructure what has been getting deployed, or the current set of technology what is getting evolved, do you definitely see a possibility of trying to mitigate that risk to some extent? Or do you think we still have a long journey to go in terms of creating those barriers to manage those risks in the near future?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and if I really look at it, moment you talk about technology, technology has reached a stage, whatever you can think, it can do it. And it can do even more. It's not doing it, possibly you've not thought about it, or one day very soon, all the movies you see in the Matrix and all, technology will start doing it itself. So technology-wise, it's far ahead. I think if I very proudly like to mention here, among all the august security professionals or the risk professionals, the Indian risk professionals have been definitely the best in the world ever. Look at the risk you face. You have more than 3/4 of the country under natural disasters. You have terrorism. you have information warfare, you have everything. So we always have been the best manpower, whether in military or police or corporate security professionals, right? Now comes a challenge where we are not prepared, and somewhere or the other, not even enough effort has been put up, is the integration of all the efforts. Do we have a seamlessly stitched mechanism which can bring intelligence to a stage that from a corporate professional to a police professional to a military guy to government and a bureaucrat all understand it well? Everybody have their own definitions and they don't exchange information. Similar happens in a response. We haven't got the integrated response. And although I really like these numbers coming up, 112, 1091, it's so simple. Outside you dial 911, your police, your fire, and your medical, everybody gets simultaneously mobilized. So the integration of response, which has to be at least thought by human and delivered by technology, is the missing piece here. That's my understanding of, as a country where we stand, whether at the borders, and with due respect to all the wonderful military or let's say the armed forces professionals, I also happen to be one of them. Same is situation, whether Air Force knows what Army is doing, whether Army will get support of Air Force, or Navy is going to go in another direction is not known there as well. So the integration of effort, whether at the border or at the homeland security, is the missing piece.
Very well said, Mr. Gary. I think we need to create a platform where, or a seamless integration communication mechanism between. I think it is true for any corporate environment as well. Sorry, I thought I'm holding it closer. I think it's very well said by Mr. Gary that yes, we need to create a integrated platform where multiple organizations, multiple setups can communicate with each other so that the effectiveness goes up. I have one question here for Mr. Pillai. Mr. Pillai, if you can just help us understand that, do you think security, safety, and loss prevention in the businesses we have impact on nation's building effort? Indirectly, what it impacts to the business and how it impacts to the nation's building effort. If you can throw some light on that, Mr. Pillai, that would be really nice.
Thank you very much. And I'm pleased to be part of this esteemed panel. And thank you to the moderator for the question. I also want to express my appreciation to the IISSM Secretariat and the executive for inviting me to this platform. I have been attending these conclaves for the past 20 years, and in the past 3 years, I've been missing my annual pilgrimage coming to India. I was quite comforted when the executive chairman said that going forward, the hybrid mode of hosting the conclaves will be the practice, and I'm hoping to join you in person next year. So thank you very much for the gracious introduction as well. In responding to the question, and I take note of the statements of Mr. Sinha and the keynote speaker. For any society to be prosperous, I believe that safety and security lies at the heart of the nation. And in doing so, the citizens of the country want to feel safe. They want to feel protected from risks and injury. And likewise, they want to feel secure, which is feeling safe from or protected from danger or threat. Likewise, in the business environment, as we've heard from Mr. Sinha, all activities hindering growth should be prevented or minimized. And that boils down to, or what basically we refer to as loss prevention. Now, in terms of the whole approach to nation building, we know as citizens, personal safety is a human right. And it is necessary for human development. And I want to refer to Maslow's. I'm going the roundabout way to answer your question, moderator, but I'll get to the point. We emphasize that personal safety is a human right, and it's important for human development. And this is affirmed by Abraham Maslow, the famous psychologist, who came up with his 5 basic human needs. And in his theory or hierarchy of needs, he identified basically, firstly, at the bottom of the pyramid is physiological needs. We all need that: food, water, sleep, etc., to our sustenance. The second need that he identified, and remember, this is from the bottom working up of the pyramid, he identified safety and security issues. So, in as much as safety is a personal human right, we're also born with this innate feeling to feel safe. Now, why is safety and security important for nation building? I'm saying it's not just about reducing crime or preventing injury. Safety and security is important in community and nation building because it is about building strong, cohesive, vibrant, and participative communities. And how do we go about doing this? We can do this in many ways. We heard from the keynote speaker as well as Mr. Sinha and Mr. Medica as well about the role of private security, the private security industry. Now, I just want to share some insight into how this industry started evolving and the factors that contributed to its growth and how that is an enabler in nation building, because the private security industry is an important role player or stakeholder. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. And in most democratic dispensation, pardon me, it is the constitution of the countries that guarantees the protection, the safety, and the security of individuals. This mandate is transferred onto the police department or the Ministry of Police. And the police now are tasked to maintain law and order and to ensure that citizens are treated fairly and equally before the law. However, when we have a dysfunctional police system, we find that citizens lack faith in the police, they lose trust in the police, they lack confidence in the police. And research has confirmed that when you have inefficiency in the police, when you have lack of trust in the police, and when you do not feel comfortable to go to the police as an ordinary citizen to lay your complaint, then we have experienced, or we've seen, and you've seen in India, I've seen it in my country, in South Africa, and all over the world, that when police are failing, then private security steps up, because citizens who can afford to pay for the service pay for their protection. And we find that I've done some research in preparing for this response, that the private security officers exceed the police officers by far in many countries across the world. And the factors that have contributed to this increase in need for private security services include rising crime rates, unemployment, the citizens' fear of crime, the frequency and upsurge in terrorist acts, the development of mass private property, for example, shopping malls, all require additional security and so forth. So the role of private security officers here is to support communities, and they are there mandated to protect their assets and property. Whereas the police, on the other hand, are there to protect the public interest, protect the interests of the state, of the district, of the municipality. And I'm going to come to an end very shortly, Chair, but I just want to bring up the concept or the point of active citizenship. Now, active citizenship in developing strong nations and cohesiveness amongst nations is important. And this basically means the communities and citizens working together, mobilizing themselves for the betterment of the community and to improve the members of the community life. Active citizenship can be encouraged through security awareness campaigns, security awareness programs that stimulates partnerships, cooperations, and working together. Active citizenship also requires us to look at vulnerable groups in the community: women, elderly, children. The question of gender-based violence is permeating all parts of society. It's not the role of the police. Domestic violence is a personal issue. It is citizens, but the public themselves, if they hear neighbors, a problem with the neighbors, to raise this and bring awareness to it. How do we ensure safety at schools? How do we ensure the safety of our girls in schools? The school has a mandate. The school governing body has to execute the mandate to manage the school. But at the end of the day, we as parents are sending our children to the schools, and we expect them to be in that safe and secure environment. So, Mr. Moderator, just a long response to your question. I am saying that to facilitate and encourage citizen participation in nation building, I am saying that if citizens have the approach of hearing something, seeing something, and knowing something, we need to say something. And in this way, no matter how small or insignificant it may be, we can now start practicing being active citizens. I'll pause there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Pillai. I think it was a very thoughtful response you had given. But here I would like to add maybe a pointer to that, what you have shared. If you can just throw some light on that. You meant to say there has to be some sort of awareness program which has to be built between the society, citizen, the key stakeholders like the civic authorities to come together and try to understand what the society need at that particular time and try to work around that. Is something what you want to drive home back?
Yes, indeed. I heard from the keynote speaker talking about public-private partnerships. And that can be expanded beyond just being public-private partnerships. It should involve community, public, private, police, business. It should be as widely consulted as possible, because crime prevention, loss prevention, safety, security is not one entity or one institution's role. It has to be multifaceted. And that awareness should start at the junior level, at the school level, even at the preschool level, that security awareness, how to care for your personal belongings. That should, with that culture, citizens grow up with the feeling of, I have to take responsibility for my own safety, my own security, and that transfers itself into the school, into the work, into the bus, or into wherever, into a public space. And it's that responsibility and that partnership. As I said, one cannot do it in silos. One has to work inclusively, and in doing so, encourage this active citizenship or active participation in terms of it's the police's responsibility, or I have a security guard outside my house and they will take care of my safety and security. No, it starts from the self, from the I. I should start this, and parents should start instilling this from a junior age and that should be a part of a value system as well. Thank you.
Very well said, Professor. I think you've articulated it quite nicely, that how that partnership process has to initiate and where it has to go and who all need to be the stakeholder in that. I'll take that clue from what Professor has said, and this is my question to Colonel Dixit. Sir, you have been hearing our eminent panelist, Major Gary and Professor Pillai has put across their point on this particular thing, where the partnership building process to build the society. What is your take on that, sir? Do you think what are the ways, methods we can build those kind of synergies to make the society much more safer, and how it can contribute to the nation building process in that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shankar, and thank you IISSM for giving me the opportunity to be on this panel. I hope I am audible to everybody and also visible, right? I heard the keynote speech of Mr. Hebliker with keen interest, and it was very informative. And recently, what Professor Pillai has brought about on the role of society and how synergy can be built. Now, I have been mostly a defense person, 27 years and 4 years training. So about 30 years, we were mostly in uniform. And what happens is that we have a different way of looking at security because we are mostly focused on external security. Uh, and with the 30 years of external security in your mind, the inner, machinations and the inner security and internal security parameters and factors are quite far away from our mind because in case you mix through, then you tend to get confused. And that also explains when defense forces are brought into certain roles where internal security is needed, it becomes very difficult to define to a soldier that, you had an enemy outside, but now you have to deal with an enemy inside. So what I'm trying to get is that, the focus of defense forces, the military, the Army, Navy, Air Force, is slightly different from what internal security agencies deal with professionally and on a day-to-day basis. Now, that being said, uh, security is important for everybody, right? Like Professor Pillai mentioned that he has private security guards, considering the situation that is there in that particular geography. And if I'm in my home, I would like my home to be secure. Why do I have a door? Why do I live in a society where there are guards and there are CCTV cameras? And we have the police and we have the various agencies that help us go about it. Now, we have a lot of contribution from the private agencies in the last decades because when I was a child, we never had these security guards which used to pop up at every nook and corner, whether you're entering a bank or you're entering a mall or a shopping center or a shopping market or an RWA. The situation decades back was much different. But now you have a very important role of private agencies in bringing about security, not only for the common man or a resident or a citizen, even for private enterprises, conglomerates, MNCs, business offices, complexes, shopping markets, malls, etc. Now, all this, I'm sure, comes at a cost to somebody or the other. But why is it important is because unless you have an environment of secure, uh, you know, uh, environment where everybody feels secure and can work securely, travel securely, do his business as a citizen securely, you will not be able to progress as a society or as a country. For me to go from my home to my workplace, I need to be assured that if I am going from place A to B, I will reach there. Now, that is a measure of security. If my child goes to school from home and I need to be sure that yes, he will be able to reach and come back. And there are, umpteen dozens of such examples that you do on a daily basis where security becomes very important. Now, in case you do not have these, it will be very difficult for a particular community to progress. And that's where the question which you mentioned about synergy comes in. So, as a society, we have to understand the needs of ourselves today. We have to understand where and which agencies come into play. We understand the limitations of the internal security agencies, like maybe the police or the paramilitary forces. And we have to see where the citizen steps up and fills that gap. And that we have been seeing in the example that I mentioned from a few decades ago to now. So we have RWAs which employ security guards. They put up these barriers or security points, checkpoints. I think every RWA is going for a CCTV kind of an arrangement. We have the beat guard at night who goes around and checks. These are just examples which I'm going from giving from a personal experience. If you go to your office, you have the office security that ensures the access controls are there, and the biometrics are checked, and you have periodic reports and testing and so on. Now, of course, if we consider a utopian concept where there is no threat internally, then all these costs which come to either a corporate or a municipal corporation or the police or the government would be much, much lesser. But the kind of evolution that and the entire civilization is happening today, whether it's in India or it's abroad in the northern hemisphere, southern, west, east, we cannot do away or disregard the threats that exist. And hence, it's very important that the civil society at large be aware of them, the governments and the regulatory administrations be aware, the private agencies also be aware, and obviously you all have to cooperate to ensure that we can go about doing our business on a day-to-day basis with a peace and with a sense of security and assurance. I think that's my take on it, Shankar.
So I have a very interesting question which has come to me. I thought I will also try and ask from with your experience. Um, as a country, can we look at the entire security without the global support in a given scenario uh, where there are challenges geographically spread across? So what is your take on that? As a country, are we prepared? Are we ready? Can we manage our security, both internal, external, without any major support from an external environment? Do you think, is it possible? Are we there? Are we working towards it? Or do you think in the near future we may reach to that particular point?
I hope, Shankar, that question is for me.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Because since you come with
Okay.
more than 20 plus years or 25 plus years of experience, I thought let me
Yeah.
ask what is your take on what is our situation currently we are in?
Yeah, so I will not comment on the situation of the preparedness of the military forces, but let me tell you,
Yeah,
if your neighbors were friends, you would not need that much of deployment on your borders, right?
yeah,
So the best security comes from having good partners and good neighbors. However, that cannot be taken for granted, and you always need that. Now, coming to the point about, I think I'll put it in the words that we are using very often these days is self-reliance, atmanirbharta,
yeah,
and being alone.
yeah,
Let me tell you today, in no part of your day-to-day life or your existence can anybody be independent. I mean, take it from everything. The clothes I'm wearing, if you look at the supply chain of those clothes, it'll be mind-boggling. The pencil, the pens, the mobile phones that you use, the conference we are having today. Look, we've got panelists from outside the country also.
yeah, yeah,
In no part of our existence today can we all be we stand aside and say, look, I'm going to do this on my own, and it's going to be either my way or the highway. But yes, of course, we must be very focused on trying to be as self-reliant as we can. And that's a very good thought and a principle that we must exist by. And in defense, of course, till now, we used to have global tenders where the procurement procedures and policies were such that we had majorly all participation from only global companies. Opening up those opportunities to the Indian industry is a very, very welcome and a long awaited and long asked for step. And look, we have our industry stepping up. We have artillery guns which are now being accepted in our, not only our army, but being exported. And that is just one example. You have the ordnance list, if you see, it runs into virtually lakhs and crores. If we could meet that requirement, even on a larger percentage basis, imagine the amount of foreign exchange we will save. And saving of foreign exchange for any country is very important because it improves your bullions and your foreign reserves and makes you it makes you stronger and takes you further on the path of self-reliance. So there is no doubt that we have to build as much as we can internally ourselves. However, the aspect that it'll be 100% internal is quite utopian. I think it's a very ideal dream, and we know that, in our past experience of entire civilization, idealism is something which is on paper and in poetry, but not in reality. So I think that's my take on it, Shankar. Thank you.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. That's something which I will put it across. From here, Major Gary, I have a question to you, since you work with a lot of corporates on providing various consultancy services. In a given scenario, how independent are we as a corporate in India to manage our security, which is there are different levels of threats in an organization. It is data, it is cyber, it is also communication, networks, etc. How are we placed in a current scenario?
So as such, when we talk about within the ecosystem, let's say within the country, or let's say within the city, or even a SEZ or a production unit, industrial park, wherever, my take is opposite. You need not worry about being self-reliant. You need to go back to a successful, effective, integrated system. If you try to create something for yourself only, first of all, you cannot live in a silo. Secondly, your resource need will go so high up that you will not spend that and unnecessarily end up being unsafe. So within the ecosystem, if we talk about, there is a strong need of not only the corporates getting integrated, but if possible, also uniting with the government forces, whether it's the intelligence unit, local police, and this can always be a, like we always very happily call it public-private partnership. There have been some successful projects which have been done, and at the same time, the scope to add on more projects is immense. So I will say really a corporate should not make an effort to be an independent, secure company, rather create that ecosystem when you and all nearby people end up being safe.
Thank you, Major Gary, on that. My next question is to Mr. Kolade. Sir, I would like to understand, how do you prepare as an industry to back up the national effort to secure itself for overall security of the country? This will give us a very different perspective when we talk about you representing yourself from an African country. So how do you look at that scenario at your place, and how are you managing that? So you are muted currently. So you need to increase those. So you are in mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Could you kindly repeat that question, because I was a bit.
So what we would like to understand from you is, like, how do we prepare as an industry to back up the national effort to secure itself for overall security of the country, especially from a perspective of from where you are representing an African country from Nigeria. How are you looking at it? That.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity for being here. It's a pleasure to listen to all the different perspectives, especially the Indian perspective. I think from this region, we kind of have to start from the the macro environment, because the macro environment has in actuality driven our micro measures. So I don't know if you're aware, but in this part of the world, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, our economies have been diversifying, especially for Nigeria, away from oil, but that has been hampered by the rise of two groups in our Sahelian north. One we call Boko Haram, and another, which is, I think, well-known, Al Qaeda. And so what that has done, something that started being a problem in a little part of the country, in a little northeastern part of the country, has, and should we say in the northern Sahelian region, which was probably, from an economic perspective, was not that important, has basically spread, and so it sort of kind of spread generally across the whole Sahelian region, and has slowly over the years sort of moved downwards right to more or less the industrial region of the southwest. So it's from the macro level, it's impacted us, it's impacted economic growth, it's impacted regional growth, and so obviously as an industry, measures have had to be taken to sort of protect our assets and protect our workers. And essentially, what we have done is, I guess it's what I'll call self-protection. What we've done is there has been a move away, sort of a move into industrial sort of estates. So people have sort of moved away from having a sort of a factory at a certain location that is exposed more to industrial estates, and that has been a trend that has been taking place in the last 4 or 5 years. And so you move to industrial estates, you have to sort of physically relocate your assets into industrial estates, and the estate essentially provides the protection that's required. And it's got to a stage where there isn't sort of a complete reliance on the federal government. It's in sort of regional protection, and so it's our most serious issue. It's as I said, it's impacting economic growth adversely. It boosts our costs. It boosts operating costs. But really, it's a case of clusterization, sort of coming together to sort of collectively find security solutions to protect our assets. And I have to say, there's certainly in our manufacturing sector, we have a large sort of Indian presence, and everybody, I will say all of us, are in this together to essentially protect our assets. So I don't know. I hope that has answered the question.
Yeah, very much, very much. So I'd like to just add, would like to understand from you in that scenario where you are trying to protect your assets. Are you trying to also build create some awareness, synergy, a partnership kind of scenario where you feel various sectors of society coming forward and trying to contribute in creating a safer environment? Do you see that progression happening over there?
Yeah, I mean, what we do, as I said, clearly we go into clusters. The workers work. A lot of workers are kind of bust in, but of course, there's a lot of self-policing. So the community knows, essentially knows, are kind of self-policing as well. Now, in the southwest where we are, the southwest is sort of a mixture of, I think, beyond some local religions, the two sort of main religions are Christianity and Islam. And of course, within the local community, there are certain, should we say, sympathizers to Boko Haram and so sometimes that causes challenges because the self-policing might not be as efficient as it could be, because in this, say in the region of the southeast, where it's 95-96% Christian, the self-policing works extremely efficiently. In the southwest, it's fairly efficient, but there are slip-ups. So it's a community. There's community involvement. You can't protect yourself without the community, essentially.
Great, Mr. Colado. I think you have articulated the exact scenario, how you are trying to build the synergies in the territory where you are currently operating. I think we had a fairly good amount of discussion between all the panelists today. Would request any questions for any panelist from all the people who are sitting here. Any questions you would like to ask? Yes, sir.
Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Gary mentioned that we've been fortunate that we've not had any major terrorism related incidents in the last few years. The question is that because the level of radicalism which was inducing these incidents or causing these incidents has gone down, or is it our own capacity building in terms of intelligence gathering, both in terms of intelligence and physical deterrence, which has gone up over the years?
So that actually is a question which will possibly cover an essay to answer, but I'll make few points with very limited understanding I have to say. That I'm taking the liberty to mention that the Indian terrorism problem is more of inflicted by a neighboring country rather than an inbuilt genuine problem we have. So when that neighboring country has been themselves facing problems, obviously their focus also shifted a little bit. Secondly is, I think we have been able to play a far better role in international relations to get a message to the neighboring country that if you do this, you'll also be in trouble. So that has really done very well for us. Our response to their terrorist attacks, our response to what they have attempted few times has been really brutal. So that also has served a message. At the same time, if you look at, if you've very incisively seen situation, the Indo-Pak situation, especially at the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, has almost turned into an Indo-China situation. Presence of Chinese troops within POK has been accepted by all. Just the north of POK is the area where China is looking at developing something they don't hold right now in the world, is getting the chips themselves. The semiconductor chips, they have an external dependency. They couldn't be the front runners for 5G worldwide, and the products are getting shot down wherever places because they don't have a chip. The moment they have a chip, they can really become very, like we were talking about, self-reliant in producing end-to-end technology. So their interest in that area, because there's huge water and the huge minerals which are required to make the chip. So it's already becoming an Indo-China problem, and China doesn't place the terrorism war as Pakistan has been doing. So their game have been more economic in nature, information warfare in nature, strategic in nature, resource in nature. And yes, last but not the least, definitely a very big factor, the ability of our own intelligence agencies and homeland security agencies has also risen considerably. Use of technology, use of training, how to handle it. We even keep the sleeper cells tracked now. Earlier we were not aware where are the sleeper cells and they could be used. Now we also track sleeper cells so that if they're used, we know what's going to happen. We have avoided many terrorist incidents. If you look at number of arrests which have happened, of late the amount of ammunition and arms that have been caught, they do indicate that our ability in terms of handling those situations also have gone up. So it's a mix of all, Very difficult to say what percentage role played by what, but that's possibly my take on it.
Thank you.
Probably also I'd like to add, as a country, we are communicating with a lot of clarity. We are taking stand. We are able to communicate at a global level what we intend to do, what we are, and what we expect. So I think that level of confidence which is getting built up, of course, because of the overall development which is happening in India. So we are reaching one of the top 5 economies in the world. So that also brings in a lot of attention, I think, from all the stakeholders across the borders. I think that may be one of the reasons. I just want to add that point to that. Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, Colonel Bakshi, please, please.
Yeah, Shankar, I'll just add to, Major Gurpavan brought it out very, he brought out all the factors. I just want to add, as a security person, what are the, measures of ensuring security? There are primary controls and secondary controls, right? So what we have focused in the last many years is going after the primary controls. And what are the primary controls for any security paradigm? One is prevention. If you prevent a problem from occurring, it's a better cure than it's a better strategy than to start curing it, right? The other is being proactive. So what was mentioned about, having more information about collecting it before it happens, sleeper cells. So I think these two primary controls are the most important in any security paradigm. Prevent it and be proactive to ensure security. And how we have also gone about is to reward any prevention, give it more media coverage than something which happens after that. If you remember a few years ago, when an incident used to happen, and the entire media used to, flock down there and give you reports of what happened, this happened, and all those kinds of gory details. Now the media has come to participate in this, that whenever a prevention happens, that gets equal accolades. And the team which has prevented that also gets recognized, right? And that builds a complete paradigm and a virtuous circle of prevention and proactiveness. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other? Yeah, please.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Colonel Vikram from Cushman and Wakefield. So I just want to know that we talk about security, safety, and even though now security has become more organized than what it was around 10 years back, but however, what I feel that involvement of whether it is employees in corporate sector or the general public in overall is very, very less. For them, security and safety is still a burden, and unless they themselves are getting affected, they do not take any action. Whether they are see anything going wrong, or and sometimes what they don't want to follow the basic guidelines of a residential complex, and we always hear they are manhandling security personals and all those things. So as a central level, what are the actions we should take to bring awareness about the residents and a general public so that their involvement increases, which will help the security professionals to perform their duties better?
Yeah. Like to, you have targeted to any particular panelist?
No, sir, anyone, sir.
Would like to take this question?
Yeah, I think, sir, first of all, yes, you're absolutely right that the participation or responsibility is very skewed. But one has to notice, in the end, the sufferer will always be the common man, whether as an employee or as a resident. Somebody is going to suffer, whether it's the immediate impact of an attack or a fraud, or even the cost of upgrading the security and safety, adding police, adding technology, again is tax-based job. So in the end, they do not recognize they are actually the sufferers. There has been this Indian mindset, and I think we have not thrown it away along with the Britishers in 1947, that we love to blame somebody else. That time it used to be a Gora Sarkar, so we will say, you are to be blamed. We still behave the same manner. And it is reflected not only in security. Till date, if there's a protest, vandalizing and breaking government property is seen as a way of protest. So we have not shed those mindsets. It's very surprising, agonizing, and I think we need to grow up. That's where the stage is. But what you're asking for is the master stroke as well. If you can make everybody responsible, you've taken care of everyone. Since we love to have the tendency of something wrong happens, I know whom to blame, rather than ensuring the wrong doesn't take place. So that's a attitudinal issue, it's a mindset issue, it will continue. But somewhere or the other, rather than leaving it like that, the first thing we need to do is to ensure people understand it's your lives. And I know that your firm is taking care of a lot of residential areas, official areas and all. So at residential area, I think the message which can reach the fastest to any parent's head is talking about the kids. We always are worried. We may not think about our own safety, but moment you talk about somebody, kids' safety, even if kids are grown up sufficiently, we do get sufficient attention. Similarly, at the employee level, there have to be few mandatories within the company policy. We Indians love to get educated to work. We do exactly what is needed for promotion. We have this fire in us to keep growing. Professionally, I need more salary, I need a promotion. So moment you can link safety and security into the overall appraisal, things will immediately change. This happens in industrial units. Safety is part of management review, safety is part of your appraisal, and see how stringently those safety measures are followed. And mostly when you're looking at large cities, the IT companies or service industry, where the pampering of employees takes place. They're picked up from home, they're dropped home, all the free food and whatnot. So companies are not making effort to ensure that they make them responsible, the employees. Rather, they're thinking that I'll serve them everything, the way food is being served, other aspects. So there is an attitudinal issue needed at the citizen level, also at the company level, so that they make these policies and integrate. So there's not a one shot which will win the match, but there has to be regular efforts, if this at least provides an indicative answer.
Behaviorally, I think we as Indians we understand the importance of security, but we may not be practicing it because when we travel out, when we travel overseas, our behavior is very different. When we come back here, our behavior is very different. So I say definitely there is hope that with a proper education, somewhere what it lacks, I would just like to add what Major Gary has said. Security as a subject is not taught at any level, at any education level in our ecosystem. It is only taught as a professional subject, whereas it should be taught as a general subject so that people understand the importance of security going forward.
Yeah, no, thanks Shankar. Yes, that's still a gap of what is being taught, but very happy to say the CBSE has included, and a lot of other boards now, treating safety, emergency response and all the fire safety subject at the school level. So that's a new inclusion. It will take its own time to get fully implemented, but thankfully it's included.
Great. So I think we will take closing remarks from all the panelists. To start with Major.
So something which possibly didn't got touched during the discussion. When we're looking at national growth, one of the big things of national growth is also the capability, economy and everything else. I do want to share a small piece of data which I read, and it was very well researched paper. A country like India, if you look at the total cost of handling accidents, whether these accidents are on road, inside a home, or at a factory, wherever, the total number of accidents, the cost is not only the immediate cost of bearing that particular loss, but there is also a added on cost of providing the medical response. If you have lost a workforce, what kind of loss it was. So if you really add up everything, it is almost equivalent to 2% of GDP, which is very, very huge. So that's the kind of national growth also we security professionals provide if we ensure even that goes down. And a lot of people who treat security as a cost, I want to make it very clear, please ask that person if the person is ready to leave his or her home without locks and windows and leave away. If not, then security is not a cost, security is investment. Even if somebody has to invest in a country, the foreign investors coming here, first of all they see, is my investment secure? People will go to a country where investment is secure, even if the rate of return is few percentages less, where my investment is not secure. So all these factors are important. They do play a role. As security and risk professionals, we also need to highlight it well. So security is an investment. You will not drive a car without a brake. Although brake is not adding in anything in terms of running the vehicle, is actually there to stop it. But that's the safety you want. So security is very much an integral part of business. It's very much a right investment and has the capability to produce wonderful results even in terms of economic percentage. So that's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Can I hear from Colonel Dixit as well?
Yeah, thank you, Shankar. I think Pawan put it very, very properly. Only thing I can say is that today in the private industry, security everywhere is looked at a cost center and not as a profit center. But you see, the board cannot do without security. No board today in the private industry or the government can do without security. And like he mentioned, we all have to be secure to be able to be productive, right? Until you have that feeling of security, you will not be able to concentrate on your work and provide productivity. However, I also want to add here that if we can bring security through partnerships and reduce the cost that comes from external factors, having to put up barricades, having to deploy not one police force, but 5 police forces in layers, we can also progress. So while we should not look at security as a cost, but trying to provide an environment where your cost can be minimized without decreasing the factor of security would also help. Now, of course, that can be done by professionals and by the think tanks, but it will be a good situation where the security can be made through partnerships and by optimizing costs and not increasing costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Dixit. Can I take it from Professor Pillai as well?
Thank you, moderator. I'm sitting here and I feel rather stimulated and encouraged by the response and the inputs and comments from the esteemed panelists. I think one of the takeaways that I take from this discussion is that if nations want to prosper and grow, citizens need to take responsibility. And for that, there needs to be an attitudinal change. And I think Major Singh has just echoed that sentiment. And citizens should take responsibility. And that responsibility should come about by making citizens aware of being security conscious and being vigilant. I've also heard concepts like synergy and partnerships and ecosystems. And that all boils down to, or brings us down to one point as in terms of creating a symbiotic relationship. We cannot do it on our own. We need this synergy, this partnership, this ecosystem to assist us to prosper and build ourselves and build a nation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. And can I take the final closing remarks from Mr. Kolade? Sorry, you have to unmute yourself, sir. We are not able to hear you. You have to unmute yourself. Okay, some technology glitches. I'm just trying to summarize today's discussion. It was really a pleasure talking to all the 4 panelists. We have a very great panelist today who has shared their very insightful thoughts. One of the major things which has come out in today's discussion is how we can build partnerships, synergies, a symbiotic relationship, between different setups, trying to create a much more safer ecosystem for the nation building process. Once again, I'll thank all the participants and almost all the attendees over here for listening to us patiently. Thank you very much. Thank you.